There we
Awesome.
go.
All right, cool. Will, thank you so much for being here, man. This is awesome for my students. We are here is basically to ask you a couple of questions. But we know what, for starters, just very briefly, I feel like at this point, Will, half of my students know who you are already, and maybe more than half at this point. But if you wouldn't mind giving us a very short intro, that'd be awesome.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Will Glass. I am one of the co-founders at Ostrich, and co-founded the company with a fellow Rollins alum, Andrew Holiday. We played soccer together. I graduated from Rollins in 2014. He graduated in 2013. And yeah, we've built this financial health app for college students. And our aim is to make it fun and rewarding to make good financial decisions. And we've got an app that's live on iOS and Android. And yeah.
Awesome. So Will, the reason I requested this meeting and the reason we're recording this is because one of my students in my consumer behavior class had a pretty broad question, a broad enough question for me to call in the experts essentially. And the question was regarding, Will, I lost your video. Uh-oh.
Yeah, I accidentally tripped the, I have an external thing and I think I unplugged it on accident, but yeah, we're good.
So Will, as I was saying, I wanted to request this meeting, and the reason we're recording this is because a student of mine, we had a very broad question, broad enough for me to call in the experts here. You started an app. You are heavily involved on the day-to-day in terms of marketing it and all that. The question that my student had, who was also developing an app, was what are some of the key marketing strategies to create hype, one, and to maintain that hype? And the reason that I asked for your expertise is because the demographic that she's trying to target is the same demographic that you are targeting. So some ideas on what has worked, what has not worked, just the things that you've done in the past, just very briefly, without breaking any confidentiality, obviously. If we could do a bit of a Q&A on that front, that'd be awesome. So let's start with some of the things that is working right now.
Yeah, well, I'll give a little caveat that this is just my perspective and experience. Every app is different in what you're doing. And I think you gave a little context. So I think they're doing more of a two-sided marketplace that's really focused on a specific geographic location, which means that the way that you would target that group is a little different than, say, a consumer app that's looking all the way across the US. So I think that's the other thing is understanding who's that core target customer at a very, very what they call the wedge to market. So I don't know, you might have covered that, but what's that smallest subset of people that you need? Where are they? And then figuring out how to reach them is kind of the way that to go about it. We've tried to just post on social media and that doesn't really work. And even if you do have a hit, you can get people to engage and watch pieces of content, but that doesn't mean that they'll actually go download your app. They might just find what you did really interesting and click off before the call to action. So anyway, so in terms of what's
let me quickly interrupt here, right? So this concept is really, really interesting because you're telling me about what I'm seeing in terms of struggles an app has is, one, we need people to download the app, and two, we need people to use the app. But you're saying that there are three different objectives a company could come in with. One, just to be visible, to be aware of the brand, right? So to have people be aware of the brand with social media ads and all that. Then there is have them download it. And then there is once they've downloaded it, now they need to use it and make good use of it, create some NPS and all that kind of stuff as well. I'm seeing three different angles. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a common thing of if we just go get some influencers or we do this social media strategy or whatever, we're gonna have a ton of success. And that's not necessarily the case. Because one, some of that stuff's really expensive. So you've got to really think of how can you do things that aren't paying Mark Zuckerberg essentially or TikTok, right? How do you not put money in their pockets when you're marketing an app? It kind of goes to the very front end, even before you develop and build the product, there's this concept of jobs to be done, which may be outside of the purview of this class, but you might have heard it in other concepts when you're building something. Is what is the job that you're solving? So like write it up as a job description versus like my app has this cool feature that's really shiny and like nobody cares. Sorry, I was about to curse there. Nobody cares about your features. Like, what does it do for me? So what's the job that you're solving? Like if this was a person, what would I be hiring this app to do? And so for us, like when we think about what's the job to be done for Ostrich, we're focused on like, how do we, like, we're the person that you hire to like get you to like make that smart financial decision that you've been putting off for a while. Like you hire Ostrich to be like, all right, like let's set up that emergency fund now, or like, all right, time to build credit. Like, here's what you do. And like, that's who we would be if it was a person. Like that's what we would be doing. And then we would like give you the high five or, you know, a reward for doing that. So like that's, I think about the jobs to be done. So even before you get into the marketing strategies, you have to understand that. And if you understand that, what problem you're really solving for your user, then you can come up with really unique marketing strategies. And trying to figure out ones that don't cost a bunch of money, because you can throw a lot of money into marketing and see no results, or like see a bunch of views, but no translate to downloads. And then you mentioned downloads don't even equal engagement and usage of your product. So there's like a bunch of steps that you have to do. But the first one is like, how do you even just capture the attention of the group that you're trying to reach?
Okay. Let's go into a bit more specific. This is a very good way to start. Let's go into a bit more specifics. And since we're on this kind of journey, tell me what hasn't worked for you. So in particularly you. What were some of the—
I mean, I think so. I say the first mistake that we made is like when it comes to marketing, you have to really know who you're targeting. And we were way too broad initially. Like it was like, we want to help, like our product could help a bunch of people. And like, yeah, okay, great. But like, who are you starting with? And then even within that, it's like, all right, so like, we're going to start on young people. All right, then we're going to start on college students. Okay, then we're going to start with college students, but there's so many different types. So like, are we looking at seniors that are about to graduate? Are we looking at people that have student loans or that work to put themselves through school? Are we looking at people involved in Greek life or, you know, play sports? And then you can get even more and more niche, right? And like, okay, now we've got that, but like, we're only looking at this one specific school or a campus and just getting like hyper focused. So that's what's not worked, is that we were way too broad initially, and it doesn't work. Like you've just got to be super specific, where it's like, I don't know if this is going to scale to other places, but like, it's what we need to do to reach these like core initial customers that are going to jumpstart usage of our product. So like writing a bunch of blog posts, SEO, some of that stuff like was just a little premature because we weren't super focused. So that didn't work. I mean, we've been, you know, posting on social media, but we haven't been consistent. And so that hasn't worked very well for us. Like we ran a little bit of ads, but we don't have a ton of cash. And so like, again, the idea of writing Zuckerberg and TikTok checks every month, Snapchat, like it's not sustainable. So those are some of the things that just like haven't worked. It's just like, let's try to use these channels without like a real strategy. And so thinking like, what is our super hyper focused strategy, and then getting into tactics that reach that audience. And maybe they don't scale, but it's things that we can do. And I think the other thing is like thinking about the metric that matters for your app. Like, is it downloads? Is it engagement? Is it doing some certain action on your app? Because that's what you need to focus on. So how do you get somebody to take that action? If that makes sense. Like downloads don't mean anything if they don't use it. And then using it, I could open your app every day, but am I getting value from it? So I think that's the other piece, is like, when you think about marketing tactics, it's like, what gets people to like actually get value out of your product?
So action for a two-sided marketplace of this nature could be actual transactions being made.
Transactions being made. It could be like listings,
being uploaded,
for example.
listing, yeah.
Like, because with a two-sided marketplace, you essentially you can't focus on both sides. Like you have to focus on both sides, but you have to serve one better than the other, if that makes sense. Like they're going to drive it, and you've got it. And like, again, it depends on your marketplace, and there's examples of companies focusing on either side. You have all the demand, the suppliers will show. You have all the supply, the best supply, the demand will show. So there's like different ways, but who are you building for first? Like, what's the unlock? And you're not going to know the perfect answer because you could do it either way. But like, that's why getting super hyper focused is really important. So if it's listings, focus on listings. How do I get as many people to list products? Because then it's easier to drive the demand.
And so maybe lowering that cognitive load for the listings to happen, if they could be automatically sourced from somewhere, or heck, at early points, maybe even say, what are you trying to post? Send me all the info. I'll create the listings for you. Lowering that barrier to entry as much as possible could mean more listings, which could potentially mean, hey, there's a lot of listings here. Maybe I'll jump on and be on the buyer side, potentially, right?
Exactly. And it's actually interesting. So Etsy is a really good example of this. So Etsy focused on the sellers and like the creative types. And so they got a bunch of people on the platform. But what was interesting is they also became buyers. So they were also purchasing because they were that like creative, crafty type. And that was one of the things that jump-started their marketplace. So like you could have some, like you said, some sellers that actually are also buyers if they understand the product. And I totally do things that don't scale. Like I was talking to a founder that wants to create like a mom friend. And they're like, I need to build this app. And like, you can ask it any question and it's hooked up to ChatGPT and it's like in this mom voice. And I've trained this whatever. And I'm like, okay, well, how are people doing this now? Well, they're texting me. Okay. So texting is the natural interface. You can hop on Twilio and in 2 days without knowing how to code, and Twilio is just like an SMS platform, you can create a flow. It's not gonna be perfect, but you can create an MVP off of that because that's your bottleneck. So just use the interface that people are already doing. And it doesn't scale. She was like texting people back and like looking stuff up if she didn't know the answer, asking the ChatGPT. But I think that like the things that don't scale are really important because they keep you closer to the customer earlier on, which is what you really need to figure out what to actually build, because you'll have a perception and you'll be wrong. And you'll also understand what the pain points are. What's the marketing? Like we've been doing a lot of in-person stuff. So I'm sure some of your students have like gone to a trivia night or like they're student athletes and they've like, we've done stuff. And like every time I'm in those sessions, yeah, it doesn't scale. I can only be in one place, but I'm learning so much based on the questions people ask, where people get stuck. We do a bunch of surveys, which I'm sure students are probably tired of, but like there's so much rich data that helps me understand how to frame things. Like I now know, like people think a common misconception about credit is that like you have to have a credit card to build credit, which isn't the case. But I wouldn't have realized that that was a perception that our target audience had if I hadn't been there in person doing some things that don't scale. So anyway.
I had that perception since I think up until last week when you and I spoke. So I totally. Hey, look, so I want to ask you 3 more questions and then I'll let you go, being cognizant of your time and the recording length as well. My first question to you is, how important is perfecting that MVP, the minimal viable product? How important is that MVP perfection before going to market?
It's worthless. Absolutely worthless. Like, and you use the word perfection, throw out perfection. It will never be perfect. Like all the apps that you use keep developing, right? Like TikTok, massive company, and they're continuing to build new features and change. Like you're never done and it's never going to be perfect. And that's okay. Like what's this like easiest thing that you can put out that proves the concept? And it may be, you don't even put an app out there to start with. You manually go and like create a listing, or you use
on a website,
some other platform. Yeah, or website, and you just like manually create stuff. And then what you do is you learn, well, actually nobody's using X, Y, and Z features, so we don't need to build that. And that saves you a bunch of time and a bunch of money. And then from a marketing perspective, we see that people really love this one feature. So there's something here, let's ask them why they like it. And then you start to understand, okay, now I know, now you have your messaging for your marketing. And if you know who these people are, because it's a specific subset, it's, I don't know, graduating seniors specifically because they're not going to store their stuff. And again, I'm trying like, you know, then that's who you target. How do I go to all of the seniors classes in the next week and a half, get all of them to list their shit, get all of their stuff on our platform, you know, and that's like, that's the number one thing that matters. And you got to go from there. So anyway, that like, it's not like, I'm actually thinking about throwing out half of the stuff that we've built and spent building on Ostrich, because I've learned a bunch of stuff that works. And I'm like, we don't need this stuff right now. Maybe we'll come back to it. Maybe we never do. But like, the point isn't to like love the stuff that you built. The point is to solve the problem and build a really awesome company. So
I hear you. My second question, you've used a lot of incentives, right? Whether it's free products or this or that, or money rewards. How important do you think incentives are for building that hype?
Charlie Munger, if you don't know who that is, has a quote. He's Warren Buffett's like partner. and like just, billionaire, been around. He has this quote that says, "Show me the incentive and I'll show you the outcome." Incentives are everything. So like understanding, and like that can go too far, right? Like you have such a great incentive and everyone like scams you, so to speak, right? Like you have a bunch of fake people that try to sign up and like get the incentive. But it's really understanding the incentives is really important from a marketing perspective. And that it can even just be like messaging, like what's the pain point that you solve? Or it could be like gift cards, which we've done gift cards, and those are effective. We found that these in-person events are a lot of fun because we're creating experience. People love experiences, especially in the Gen Z, millennial like demographic. People love experiences, like community, social, like that stuff is really rewarding beyond the dollar value. So thinking about like what is the incentive to accomplish this, but then also understanding like compliance is an interesting thing too. Like some of the things that we do are from a compliance perspective. The school has to provide financial literacy program to student athletes. Some of the student organizations have to do wellness programming, which could be financial wellness. Therefore, we have a really fun thing, but they also have to do it. And so there's an incentive that already exists. And if you can tap into that, that's a lot easier than creating your own incentive and your own demand. So if you can tap into existing needs or like requirements, that's huge.
What I'm hearing, one of the more basic but big takeaways too is incentive doesn't necessarily have to be money, gift card related. If you're tapping into solving a need, that is seen or observed as an incentive. Question number 3 for you, and we'll end with this. In class, we talk a lot about reference groups, things that you see as associative or disassociative. But even within reference group, we talk about these key opinion leaders, right? In generic terms, influencers. How important was it or is it to tap into these KOLs to then convert a larger group? Has that been successful for you? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's the same thing if you're looking at it even just from a sales perspective, like who are the decision makers, right? So like when I look at a school, if we're targeting an athletic department because we're trying to work with student athletes, it's the athletic director, but that depends on the size of the school. If I'm looking at UF, they have 300 employees just in their athletic department. The athletic director is not actually the person that I need to talk to, but at Rollins, it is. It's Penny Parker. She makes all the decisions because it's a smaller school. So understanding those influencers are really important because it can unlock so many other things. When I look at the student organizations that we've been working with, it's the presidents of the organization, it's the treasurer, it's the philanthropy chair, because they're the ones that care about money and like the fact that we can drive money and then also like meet programming requirements. And so they unlock the rest of the organization. So absolutely, like you can think of influencers from the like they post on social media and they have a demographic, but you can also think of like smaller sub cohorts. If I'm trying to get in front of every single senior, I need to go talk to the professors that teach the capstone classes. And that's my key decision maker. And that's actually the influencer that I care about. So how can I get you, Dr. Casey, to go let me talk to all of your senior students and come share what I'm building if I'm targeting a specific campus? So that's how I would think about it, because that I don't have to spend any money. I just have to, build a relationship, email you. And like, as a student, you're going to be able to essentially make that happen pretty quickly. Like, turn that around in a day or 2 days. And there's time as well. Like how long does it take to contract with an influencer, but a key decision maker that's on a closer subset that you've got a relationship with, you're going to turn that around a lot quicker. So.
Well, it's been lovely.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been lovely talking to you. Some really, really cool insights. We do this quite often, so we're now used to these conversations. This is going to be very helpful for my students. So thank you so much. We can go ahead and stop the recording now, and we'll debrief afterwards.
Okay, cool. And if anybody wants to get in contact, you can see my LinkedIn's right there. Twitter, most people probably don't use Twitter, but LinkedIn's probably better. So
awesome. Thank you so much, Will.
Of course. Thank you.